Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, special guests and staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Town of Pelham Council for Monday, May 16th, 2016, to order. We will begin by singing the national anthem, and I would ask Councillor Papp to lead us, and all who are able to rise and sing along with us. We're going to face the flag.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patron of, in all thy songs command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
That was a great job. Thank you, Councillor Papp, for leading us, and thank you, our special guests, for joining in the national anthem. Greatly appreciated. We have to do just a little bit of business first, as I mentioned, and then we're going to have some presentations to some special guests. So it has been moved by Councillor Junkin, seconded by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved that the agenda for the May 16th, 2016 regular meeting of council be adopted. Are there any changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That's any conflicts of interest that any members of council may have. Do any members of council have any conflicts of interest they need to declare?
None, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
so no members have any conflicts, and can that be noted, please? Thank you. We will move into presentations. We have a very, very special presentation that we'd like to do this evening, and we appreciate them being here. This is the Pelham Panthers, the Pink Panthers, novice girls basketball team, U10, under 10, won gold at the Ontario Basketball Provincials in Division 1 recently. That means they finished the season as the best team in Ontario. Very, very wonderful, wonderful. Look at them, they're cheering. It's a So I have a note from the coach. He says, the girls fought hard, winning every game on their way to gold, defeating a fantastic team from Dundas. More importantly, coaches from both teams recognized the high level and focus on sportsmanship that both teams exhibited throughout the season. It was really special. And on our screen here are pictures of that. You can just see the excitement as they were awarded that championship. Gold champions, novice Ontario basketball. So it gives us great pleasure to, I'm going to come down along with Councillor Junkin. He's the Deputy Mayor. We're going to present you with certificates of congratulations and a small token of our congratulations to you. So this is Councillor Junkin. He's the Deputy Mayor. Hi, guys. And he's going to hand out a little gift to you. And I have a certificate that I'd like to present on behalf of Councillor Junkin and all of council. And it says, Ontario Basketball Association Gold Medal Champions. Council of the Town of Pelham extend congratulations and best wishes to Pelham Pink Panther Novice Girls Basketball, presented in May 2016. And our first, I called her a guinea pig, but our first is Maya Bel Castro. Come on up. Picture there, and Councillor Junkin, can you get in this photo too? And she's giggling. I hope they all giggle. Congratulations, and there's a little gift for you. And if you could just go over there, and we're going to do a photo in a second. Isabella Brenzel? Did I get? Benzel?
Frenzel.
Brenzel. I'm sorry, Isabella. Isabella! Congratulations. God Kaylee Camden? Callie. Callie. What did I say? I'm sorry, Callie. I didn't even talk to you. Callie, congratulations. Sarah Hurley? That's awesome. Another Sarah, Sarah Lowry. Good job. Ready to go, Sarah?
Thank you.
Okay, I tried to practice this. Lila Mokia? Makia? Thank you, congrats.
Thank you.
Mila Novak. All right, Mila. You got that? Charlie Thornwell? Kaya Vanacelia. Kaya. I wrote the last name down. I got the first name. And last but not least, Emily Lane. Big round. How about those coaches? Andrea Hurley, head coach. Mike Hurley, assistant coach. Darren Williams. I also have this certificate. Thank you very much. So let's give them a round of applause. Photo. Here's Wayne from the newspaper, as I mentioned earlier, and Anna. They might want to do a little photo, and if you don't mind, may I join you?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's a Blake, lots of cameras. Okay. That's great. Congratulations to you. It's commendable that what you did. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Congrats. Thank you very much for coming in. Thank you. You're more than welcome to stay for the entire meeting, but you don't
I
have to.
get along. Okay.
Be a thriller.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks. Congratulations.
Take your breath away.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Take care. Congratulations.
It's
Thanks.
going to be a short one.
Yes, it is because it's freezing in here.
I didn't touch anything.
But good planning anyway.
Hey?
Thanks again. Congratulations to you.
That's whether you're 17.
YMCA mag, or maybe they're not, maybe it's not happening, it's not listed yet. So they
Thank
might
you.
be withdrawn.
Next, we have our delegation. It's Councillor Beatty, report of regional council. Councillor Beatty, that's a hard act to follow.
It is. But still sniffing away, Mr. Mayor, in terms of 3 weeks, it's too long for a call. Mr. Mayor and members of council, we have actually two reports. One is the one that was abbreviated because of a number of delegations 2 sessions ago. And the only thing I want to point out there is I mentioned at that meeting, I believe, or one before, that in terms of the region's insurance plans, they are looking at cooperating where local municipalities wish to combine insurance to try and get better rates. That's the third item under corporate services on the first report. The second one I want to mention, and it's also referred to in the second report here, is the whole issue about the free trade zone and looking at pre-clearance locations in Niagara region, et cetera. For the report basically dealing with the meeting that happened basically regarding April 18th and 19th minutes. You're probably already aware of this, probably well underway, but there was a recommendation from the Culture Committee to approve a working group with respect to Canada 150 Fund, and members were appointed to that. I'm certain this community, as it always has, will want to have some participation and looking for funding about the Canada 150 events in Niagara. And one, just for advance notice, the second thing that is down on planning and development on that second report is regional improvement, regional official plan amendment, which is removal of environmental protection area designation in the city of Welland, just next to our border, and it's on Sumler Road, et cetera. There was a lot of discussion in terms of that and the concern that it's going to have with regard to the entire wetland complex regarding Drapers Creek. So that's something to watch. The information report went forward as it should in terms of the public meeting, but it will be coming back, and I would suggest from what I've already heard, it's a fairly contentious issue in terms of the possible impact of the wetland complex that affects Pelham as well as Welland. And back to, again, the final report for information under Public Works about the free trade, or the foreign trade zone request was made for staff to look at a number of locations. The Peace Bridge obviously is the prime location at this point in time, but they're looking at a number of locations because it could affect not only the Peace Bridge, but also the Lewiston Bridge as well, and looking for that in terms of a direction. Just a comment on that. It's a case where, as you're aware, I've been involved now for 4 terms, and there's a lot of progress towards what we hope will be the Niagara that we all want. The first one I thought was basically getting in the Places to Grow document, the concept of having the center in terms of our economic gateway center, as well as the gateway in terms of both the Niagara Falls along to Fort Erie, as well as the Canal Parkway. This free trade zone is the first one for Ontario, and given our geographical location in terms of the middle and eastern states and so on, has, in my view, significant potential. It may not be tomorrow that it occurs, but it at least opens the door to some potential for economic renewal. And what we've heard up until this point in time in terms of our growth plan in terms of 2041 is that we are probably at the point on positioning right now in terms of some significant growth for Niagara. This bodes well for the potential economic future for Niagara. So I think it's a good news story. There have been some people who have somewhat poo-pooed it in terms of the fact that it hasn't shown that much economic impact in other areas, but I again look at our economic geographical situation between the major hub of Canada and the United States, and I think it has significant potential for all of Niagara and Ontario, Canada as a whole.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beatty, for your report. Another one that I would add is information I think I highlighted at our last council meeting, and it's from that first meeting in the afternoon, and that's the motion regarding Lyme disease. So that was, council will recall back in October last year, We did have a presentation by some residents about Lyme disease, and they were doing a ride for Lyme, et cetera. And so regional council's now on, put forward a resolution regarding Lyme disease.
Right.
So let's see if there's any questions for Councillor Beatty. Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want Councillor Beatty, through you, to maybe flesh out a little bit more the concept of what was it, the foreign trade exemption. Sorry, I don't have the name in front of me, but it's the exemption area. And what I'm particularly interested in knowing is whether the concept is one of identifying specific geographic areas where certain kinds of economic activities can take place, or is this a more generalized application throughout the region, wherever the businesses are that can make a contribution, they would be covered by this? How is it meant to work?
Generalized, but in terms of cross-border issue, that a lot of pre-clearance can happen now in Canada, rather than having trucks line up and be delayed going to the States, or there'd be trucks, by the way, and it could also be rail or could be ships. So it's basically looking at the economic location of Niagara as an international trade zone, and basically looking for areas. Right now we're focusing on both Peace Bridge and the Lewiston. I think first of all the Peace Bridge, but secondly the Lewiston Bridge as well, in terms of clearance areas where we can establish where trucks and so on can come in. There will mean some cooperation between our U.S. counterparts as well as ourselves for doing that pre-clearance, but basically to expedite the movement of goods and services without, I guess, delaying the economic impact that currently is there.
So just to build on that, there's really two things going on.
That's right, I'm gathering that.
So the
Yep.
first is, well, really the second one is the one that Councillor Beatty's highlighting, and it was a motion that was put forward at Regional Council, and it's regarding a pre-clearance for truck traffic. So instead of the trucks lining up and waiting on, as Councillor Beatty indicated, on the QEW, is there another spot that they can be pre-cleared and it done in a secured area, and then somehow that's done, and then they get over the border? So it kind of speeds things up and makes things faster for the border. That's the second one. The first one is more the foreign trade zone,
That's what I was going to.
which is something that, I was going to call him Councillor Badaway, Mr. Badaway and Mr. Biddle announced a few months ago, and that's regarding what that zone would look like for Niagara. And essentially what that is, it's really a way, and I think Council asked for additional information on that, but it's a way for items to come into Canada, work to be done on them, and then exported without duty and things like that. So under the old regime or the current regime, if you would import olive oil, which when I toured the facility, they had that, they have olive oil in big vats, then they do something to it, they color it, they flavor it, all those things. So they have to pay the duty when it comes in, and then they get that duty back when it leaves the country. In this case, they can hold off on that, and it's a way of helping them through that. So it sort of fast tracks things, and that's my understanding of how that
And without-
first foreign
without
trade zone
taxes or
works.
excises building on one another each time that there's movement. For example, when we went to the Port of Vancouver, one of the features, I didn't know this, but vehicles that are imported to Canada come in as standard bare bones vehicles. And all of the upgrades, whether it's air conditioning or whether it's power vents or windows or whatever the case might be, those are add-ons that happen in North America. So we don't have a case of all of a sudden we're paying excise coming in, and all of a sudden the additions are put on and taxes upon taxes and so on. So, and I think it's important to note, while this has been, it's been under negotiation for over a decade to try and get this designation for Niagara, but I think it's rather appropriate that now MP Badaway was the chair of the Economic Gateway and Zone Committee and was very familiar with the potential impact of that. And I think all of the incentives that we put in place for industry to locate in Niagara, in the center as well as the zone, the center being the Canal Corridor, the zone being from basically Niagara Falls along the Queen Elizabeth to Fort Erie. But these are all bits and pieces, I think, of a target that's looking for an end zone, which makes Niagara far more prosperous than it is today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question did go to the issue of the foreign trade zone, and I guess I'm still struggling with that question and looking for an answer. Is the foreign trade zone meant to be a specific geographic area located within the Niagara region, or is this something that applies generally across the Niagara region? Is it a condition that, or a circumstance that businesses can apply for and become part of that foreign trade zone regardless of their location within the region.
Proximity.
Maybe it's a little early for that.
Proximity to transportation corridor will be the key determinant on that.
Sorry, I'm sorry. say that.
Proximity to transportation corridor will be the key determinant on that. And the majority of our goods now travel by, well, it might be rail, but it's road, okay, primarily, in terms of the cross-border activity. We do have, as Mayor Dave and I live in Fenwick, but there's a lot of transportation by rail as well. Well, yes, as you do as well, for Councilor Rubio. But it's a case where it's the transportation of goods in terms of having the pre-clearance done while inside this country rather than being held up at the border.
So probably what we should do is get a little bit more information on it. There was an information brochure that was around at Regional Council, but would ask the clerk to take note and we'll circulate that to council for information.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
Thank you, Councillor Beatty.
Other questions for Councillor Beatty? Councillor,
Just picking up along that same, I think that information will be critical. It's not a secret that there is a lot of activity occurring along 140 with acquiring property, and the companies that are doing that are looking exactly, Councillor, as you know, of transporting goods over to Buffalo. The EA, I think, has been completed on Netherby Road, if I'm not mistaken. So all of this is pushing towards that enhancement and development of not just QEW traffic, and I'm not being critical of it, but we want traffic and that flow of goods coming down the middle of our, because that'll enhance ours. The second part is we do know that CP Rail and its U.S. counterparts have formed the largest railway company in North America, and they are rebuilding the lines purposely for this, so they can move goods back and forth across the borders in greater, how can I say, greater groups and with less timeliness. So I think, if you, and I know you two have been watching this, there's been some criticism that grow south, grow south. Well, we want grow south. We want you to come down our area as well, not just down the St. Catharines or QEW corridor. So that information will be very helpful to help us, help you or help whoever in lobbying for that growth to be equitable across the corridor.
And two components. One, to the councillor from my ward, basically the situation where I too have last 4 information to try and put together a communication vehicle through our local media to try and go through the various details of this. And the one piece that is not in place yet, but is in the embryonic stage, is the concept of the transmission of goods from road to rail to ship and vice versa in terms of that along the canal corridor, because that's basically going to expedite through cargoes, okay, container issue. Some preliminary work was done during the last term of council, didn't materialize in terms of Port Colborne, but that's still something that we see as a critical piece of infrastructure for this kind of consideration of economic transport of goods.
thank you. Councillor Kersey, did you have something?
On that particular
Okay,
item, Mr.
on another issue, that's fine, go ahead.
Thank you. I have two questions, Councillor Beatty, through you, Mr. Mayor. First question is with respect to the Cannabis Regulation Control Report. Was that specifically dealing with medical marijuana or the growing of the marijuana, or just?
No, it was the broader stroke in anticipation of federal action or anticipated action in terms of the federal level. But there were considerable, I think from a discussion around council, considerable deficiencies that were there in the report, and we sent it back down twice for reconsideration, because obviously the point that wasn't there in the first instance was the fact that smoking, as we've spent so much time dealing with, is itself a concern for health. We wanted to have that up front and center, but it was still dealing with marijuana in terms of the federal government's direction in terms of legalization of that product. It wasn't distinguishing between the medical marijuana as opposed to recreational potential use that was there. It was a broader stroke, but to ensure that all of the public health measures would be in place to try and put controls in that would give to society basically the protections that we feel should be necessary if and when that does happen.
I think this is the situation where we looked at the report but wanted it to be reworked and sent it back. So actually that was approved recently last week at Public Health. And so that will be circulated.
So will that be circulated to the municipalities?
Yes, yeah, Regional Council has to consider it on Thursday night and then it'll be sent.
Okay, well then I'll wait to see what that is. The other question that I had was with respect, I see there was a sort of a one-line in your first report about 4 reports regarding economic development in the region came forward. And I'm curious to know whether there was any initiatives around our community and our neighboring community, or if it was all directed at Niagara Falls and St. Catharines.
It was global in nature. In a sense, it was a farewell to the current director in terms of retirement. I'll give my personal bias. I wish that we had had that directed more to a business planning session, which are in-depth sessions on the off week for 3 to 4 hours of discussion, because I think it was worthy of that kind of discussion. It was a very concentrated sort of summary of where we are in the transition from the current executive director who's retired and the new director, Mr. Oakes, coming in from St. Catharines, et cetera. It was a broad, I'd call it a broad stroke in terms of where we are as a region. And my personal bias was far too much for that kind of a meeting should have been given more in-depth attention. It probably will when Mr. Oakes becomes more fully aware of, and I shouldn't say fully aware because he has, being the St. Catharines economic manager, has significant awareness of what's been going on.
What if those
Broad stroke in nature.
I wonder if they could be forwarded to us and circulated to all
We
of
can
council.
circulate them. One of them was in draft form, and I think I hinted at it last council meeting, and that is looking at the region not as what we're selling, but rather from somebody who might want to invest here, and kind of go through that process. So we actually had Brock Dickinson present that to us, but it needed some work, and I know that the CAO had been working on that as part of the Team Niagara approach. So maybe we'll circulate those around as
That'd be
well.
great if you could. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for Councillor Beatty? Very lively. Oh, sorry.
Just quickly, you could I was visited today by a very interesting young man from the Niagara region who's doing a survey on employment. And I'm looking forward to hearing that. He was a very talented young man. He was telling me how he's going about finding out some interesting results are about the whole employment situation in Niagara. So my understanding is at the end of the summer, they'll be in a position to table that report. Is that correct?
Yes.
If you want to comment, Councillor?
And I'm pleased to see it, although to be quite honest, I was rather disappointed that it was necessary. I had made assumptions that the various agencies that are involved with employment and looking at employment statistics and so on already had a pretty clear handle on that.
Right.
It was pretty clear in the presentation that more needed to be done to drill right down to the employer level in terms of what the needs are and what the longer term projections are, et cetera. So I think it will be a genuine product that will give us, firsthand results that we unfortunately haven't had up until now.
So other regions have done it. I think it's Halton Region that has done that, and they do a report on what they find, and then you watch it over time. So I think they're university level students that are hired in order to do it.
Yeah, the only reason I say is it's interesting with the trends. He asked some very candid questions and drilled right down, and I gave him our organization where we think we're going and how, and they were looking for those kinds of opportunities for employment down the future. So I'd be very curious to see what the results were.
Thank you. Anything further? Thank you very much, Councillor Beatty, for your report. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Junkin, that the May 16, 2016 report submitted by Regional Councillor Brian Beatty be received for information. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks again for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And we'll see you, if not before, on Thursday. Thank you. Now we move to adoption of minutes. It's been moved by Councillor Junkin, second by Councillor Durley, that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. Minutes of the regular meeting of Council of May 2nd and of the special meeting of Council on May 9th, 2016. Are there any errors or omissions in those minutes? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Now we move to consent agenda items to be considered in block. Are there any items that members of council would like to lift for separate consideration? Okay, I don't see any, so it has been moved by Councillor Papp, second by Councillor Kersey. Be it resolved, the following consent agenda items be received, and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. 1. Recommendations arising from the Committee of the Whole of May 2nd, 2016, and the recommendation is that those recommendations be received and approved. Minutes of the committee meeting on May 2nd, 2016. Information correspondence items, there are 4. 1 from the Government of Canada with an announcement regarding new rail safety measures. 2 from the Minister of Seniors Affairs regarding Seniors Month, which is next month. 3, the Municipality of South Dundas resolution regarding rural economic development. and for information regarding Tim Hortons Camp Day, which is coming up on June 1st, I believe. We have a couple of items from the region. One is that item that Councillor Beatty spoke about, and that is information regarding what's called Regional Official Plan Amendment 11. And the motion is to receive it for information. And that's that item of land there on Sumbler. And then the other is regarding Lyme disease, as I mentioned, and this is that council receives the correspondence from the regional municipality of Niagara regarding Lyme disease, and the council endorse and support the resolution therein contained. And finally, there are committee minutes for information, Committee of Adjustment minutes from March 1st and April 5th, and the Library Board minutes of March 23rd, and finally, the Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee minutes of April 6th. Comments or questions on any of those items? Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it very pertinent that we support and endorse that letter concerning the Lyme disease. Last meeting, we did pass a motion to support a resolution that will hopefully stop the provincial government from decreasing funding. Now we're asking for more funding. Definitely, we feel it's necessary, especially we have several trails in our town, and a lot of them go through some bushy areas or some woody areas, and the likelihood of some ticks coming into that, probably possible. And I know some people that have been stricken with Lyme disease, and it's not a nice thing. And in fact, the diagnosis is always late, and because of that, it's critical to the person's health. So if we can get this diagnosed and treated much more quickly, it certainly will help not be so severe in that. So I'm 100% behind that, and I hope that the government does listen and the increased funding and possibilities of diagnosis and treatment improve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Anyone else to that resolution? It is a debilitating disease, so pleased that it's not only for the province of Ontario to increase funding, but also the government of Canada to increase funding for research to try to find out a little bit more. So thank you very much for that. Any other items on the consent agenda that council would like to speak about? Councillor Papp and then a Kersey. Councillor Papp.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just want to again extend that invitation to all members of council and the general public this Wednesday. We're having our seniors forum on affordable housing. We have quite a lineup of speakers, including a gentleman that we all know from the Buffalo area that's going to come in and talk to us about it. And hopefully that all of you take a time to there are a good variety, number of local builders, people that are involved in that aspect. The only thing I was hoping for, and I'm a little disappointed in see, is Niagara Regional Housing is not coming. I'm not sure what happened there. But the bottom line is that, that's all part and parcel of our ability to build on what we're going to be doing out there. So please join us, and if you have any members out there in the community, come on by and see us at the Canadian Legion at 10 o'clock this Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On another matter, specifically the COW recommendation report, specifically dealing with transportation. I just wanted to get clarity that the motion says economic sustainability. I just wanted clarity that that's understood, that it'll also look at a fareless system.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. CAO, can you?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And maybe the clerk will note that.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was an item that you spoke about during the time, so thank you for raising that.
No problem. The other issue was with respect to rail safety, and I just wondered whether we have registered to be on the list for information purposes, since we have a rail run through our town, that we would get the information that they're putting out there for safety's sake.
Thank you. Mr. CEO, do you know, or do staff registered? Is that part and parcel?
Director of Public Works.
Director of Public Works.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the rail safety regulations that are on our radar are about the crossing information sharing to be done with the rail authorities by November, and then there's crossing updates due, construction work due before 2021. So that's what's on our information about how to plan for that and what information needs to be shared and
This beyond
the
that.
breadth of that
Yeah,
project.
thank you. This is for the movement of dangerous goods.
Right.
Yeah, so this is just.
Maybe it's something the fire chief could look at and register the municipality. Fire chief?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's Transport Canada, and that's private, it's classified information. I have access to it, but for the municipality, it's not accessible.
Thank you. I think the council raised it because it says here that municipalities are encouraged to register for information on dangerous goods.
Right, they'll give you information as far as generic information, but if a car is gonna come through, a train's gonna come here with 20 cars on it, they will not give that information up. It's classified. So, they'll give you an annual report, if you'd like an annual report that went through your town previously through the year.
Okay.
But if you wanna know what's coming through your town ahead of time, it's not available.
Thank
Well,
you.
that's different
Councillor,
than-
Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's not the way I read this new directive. I got the impression that they want to have the municipality be aware of it in light of the things that
Yeah.
occurred where, basically an entire city was wiped out or village was wiped out. So, I don't know, Chief, I just wonder whether it still would be in our best interest to register and get our name on there and get the information. If it's not circulated to the public, that's fine, but at least you as our safety officer should be aware of it, and so I think it's worth looking into.
Thank you. Well, Chief, can you look into it?
Yes, that's all.
All right, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Councillor, for raising it. It's a National Municipal Rail Safety Working Group that Mark Garneau, the Transport Minister, announced new measures. So thank you for that. Anyone else on any of the other items under the consent agenda? Thank you, councillors, for raising those items and for staff for following up with a couple of those things. Are we prepared to call the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Now we move to reports. And my report. Very pleased to report on some significant activities since our last council meeting. Thanks very much to Councillors Durley and King for attending the Kinsman Club meeting at Old Pelham Town Hall on May 3rd, along with me, and we did a presentation regarding the Pelham Community Center and other developments in town. And thanks to Councillor Ribiak for attending the meeting with the fabulous Fenwick Lions on May 4th to talk about the same topic, the community center. I was very pleased that the Niagara Folk Arts Festival kicked off in Pelham on May 6th, and that's with the Ambassadors Ball, and that occurred at Lipa Park. And this is the 48th annual Niagara Folk Arts Festival. Congratulations and best wishes to each of the 30 ambassadors. And also, this is the longest continually running heritage festival in Canada, which is commendable for Niagara. So congratulations to Folk Arts, and I actually had the pleasure of attending another one yesterday. So it's I would encourage all to attend the Folk Arts Festival, various open houses. It was delicious. Also that evening, pleased to attend and bring greetings along with Councillors Kersey and King, the gala celebration to mark the 30th anniversary of the Pelham Arts Festival. I congratulated them and thanked them on behalf of council, the many dedicated volunteers, some of them who have been doing it for the entire 30 years, and for donating thousands and thousands of dollars to the Pelham Library and other cultural ventures. So congratulations to the members and the volunteers of the Pelham Art Festival. Pleased to attend something that was called Building Niagara Together, sort of a mini AMO, Association of Municipalities of Niagara, event that was hosted by the local chambers of commerce, and we had Ted McMeekin, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, speak. He spoke about affordable housing and encouraged us to watch for some changes that would be coming. Municipal legislative reforms, OMB reform, and they're going to be commenting on that. And then also something that just came out the day before, that was on the 10th of May, the coordinated planning review. And I know that that's something that council has commented on regarding the Greenbelt and the NEC lands specifically. So That's something that I think they're waiting for back for comment in September for that. So that's something that council can know about. Very pleased to join the Girl Guides of Pelham at Woodstream Park to plant trees and to improve the environment. These are tulip trees that were planted at Woodstream Park. As council will know, there's a number of ash that had to be taken down in that area by staff. And very, very pleased to have Dan, our arborist, on staff there, and Jesse, who were helping, and Kim Holland was there as well. Dan really talked about why trees are important and how trees work and how to plant properly and all that. Really give a great education lesson to the Girl Guides, and they assisted in planting tulip trees, which are native to the area. And I recounted how the previous mayor, previous council, probably 30 years ago, when the parents of the Girl Guides were that age, Mayor Bergenstein encouraged people to plant tulip trees across the town. So I'm very, very pleased that the Girl Guides were doing that. And finally, very pleased to attend and offer congratulations to Dr. Jack Lightstone for his decade of service as president of Brock University. It was a wonderful event at the new Walker School of Fine and Performing Arts in St. Catharines. Speeches, not many roasts, but a few speeches and gifts for Dr. Lightstone, but also some performances in their beautiful facility. So congratulations, Dr. Lightstone, on that, and thank you for your service. That is my report. It has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak and seconded by Councillor King. Thank you. Be it resolved that Council receives my report of May 16th, 2016 for information. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Now we move to staff reports requiring action. There is one. It has been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Junkin. Be it resolved that the Community Planning and Development Department report for an extension of draft plan approval for Woodlands Subdivision Phase 2 be received, and the council approve a 1-year extension of draft plan approval for the Woodlands Subdivision Phase 2 with a revised lapsing date of June 2nd, 2017. Woodlands subdivision, as council knows, is along Balfour, between Balfour and Cambro, on Balfour between Cambro and Welland. Comments or questions to the motion? Councillor Durley.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have some concerns in this area. Since 2010, there's been extensions granted on this, and I know of one other situation in town where extension was given and another one was asked for and it was denied, and I'm just wondering why, is this an exceptional case that there have been 2 or 3 extensions already, and now we're looking for another one? I find that to be irregular, and you know, if there is an explanation, fine, but frankly, it just doesn't sit well with me.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll ask the planning director to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. The applicants have certainly been working on this subdivision. They have completed their engineering design. They did get their MOE certificates of approval just recently, so those are in hand. The, I guess, request for the delay or the extension, pardon me, is they are in the process of selling the lots, and so they needed additional time to complete the sale, and then that new purchaser will need a bit of time to get financing in place and so forth with the with his lending institution in order to service that property. So we expect that it will come back to you probably in the fall with finalization in terms of registration and a subdivision agreement. There has been considerable work done in the last few years to move this along, but they do need an extension. It is due to expire in June.
Thank you. Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this is an exceptional circumstance?
It is. Normally it would be not something that, you know, I would just routinely extend. And I do recognize that this one has been around for a number of years. And but given where they are and what they have done to date to move it forward, I feel it's appropriate.
Thank you, and of course, you're relatively new at the position in this town, so I will have confidence in your decision, although it certainly is a question in my mind. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
I
very much,
understand.
Counselor. Counselor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the director. I note under staff comments a comment with regard to some outstanding engineering matters, including preparing a cost-sharing document for oversized servicing. As I understand it, that oversized servicing is required because ultimately East Fenwick still needs to be resolved, and we're talking about services that would be common to the larger picture. Am I right in that?
Madam Director?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, that is correct. There is some oversizing of services, and while there are additional lands to the east that are owned by the current developer, they cannot be developed until we have the secondary plan in place. So he's anxiously waiting work on that as well. So it is just the lots fronting on Balfour right now that are before you. But there is some oversizing that's required for those lots that others would benefit from.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that leads me to a follow-up, I guess, and that is perhaps the director can remind us how these lots fit into the general planning for East Fenwick. I know that the secondary plan is a work in progress. This is clearly a part of that development. How are we proceeding with this one while not having completed the full secondary plan? Just wondering how that works and how that will impact.
Madam Director?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. When the draft plan was initially granted draft plan approval back in 2010, certainly the lots were reviewed against the policies that existed back then. They are fairly large lots for an urban type of development, but they reviewed against the policy set back then because it's an existing draft plan approval. They fall under that, it's referred to as the clergy principle in terms of the policies that were in effect at the time that approval was granted. So they still fall under that, and so they still meet those policies that were in effect at that time. If you were to not grant draft plan approval or extension of the draft plan approval, then any new development on these lands would have to be compliant with current policy set.
Thank you. I think the councillor's question was about the secondary plan. Would they also have to be included in the secondary plan?
The secondary plan is something that these lots would be outside of the secondary plan area. The lands to the east, the larger parcel to the east that's not within the draft plan would be included in the secondary plan.
Thank you for that clarity. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And for clarity, did I hear the director indicate that if we were not to provide this extension, then in future these lots would have to coincide with the requirements of the secondary plan as it's being developed? Is that what I heard?
No, she said current policies. I'll let the director.
Okay.
The current policies, and so currently these lands are in the urban living area in the urban area of Fenwick. There are some density provisions in the urban living area policies with respect to this area, and so they would be required to meet that. So likely the lots would be smaller and a little bit more dense than what is currently provided for by this draft plan.
And they'd have to reapply, would they not?
They would have to reapply, go through the whole process, the whole review and circulation all over again, yes.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I understand that we're being asked to provide this extension, and that's certainly the recommendation. Is there any, from what we're hearing, is there actually a benefit to the town in expecting, in turning down this application and then expecting that a subdivision to be created in accordance with current policy sometime in the future? Or are we better going ahead with this extension?
I don't know if the director can comment on that. Some of that's a judgment call, I think, from a council perspective, but if the director can give us additional information so we can make our decision, Director?
Yes, certainly, Mr. Mayor, through you. As having draft plan approval, certainly the lots and the development was approved under the policies that existed at that point in time of the day when draft plan approval was granted. Draft plan approval was granted initially for 3 years, and it has been extended twice since then. So it is certainly at your discretion to extend it again, and if council chose not to extend it, then all of those draft plan approvals would lapse. The current, design work and that has been done would no longer be relevant, and any new application, they would have to be starting from scratch again.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That certainly gives me something to think about, and I'm wondering whether it might be appropriate to ask for some time to think about that before we proceeded with this. Or perhaps not, but I
Okay,
mean, this
well,
is something I'm
we'll see.
hearing for the first time, and I'd like to mull that over.
Okay, thank you. We'll see if others, I don't know how much time you need, but we'll see if others have any questions or comments for the director. The clerk is indicating to me that it does expire on June 2nd, which is sort of one of the other questions I had, is why is it coming straight to council as opposed to not to committee and then to council? So there would be that sober second thought time period, but so maybe there's other questions, or Councillor Durley has something, unless there's someone else.
Thank you,
Councillor
Mr. Mayor.
Durley?
Just one question for clarification. Has the same owner had this property ever since 2010, when all of this extension
I believe
stuff started?
is it the extension or 2007 when this plan came into?
Same person.
The initial approval was in 2007, you're correct, Mr. Mayor.
It's been the consistent ownership since
It's been
then?
the consistent, that's my understanding, it's been the consistent ownership since that time. Yes, the request for the extension came to us last week, and the only opportunity we had to get it on an agenda was this evening.
Okay. I have a question, and it might help council's deliberations. Ms. Weens, my memory is a bit foggy on this, but I recall that last time the applicant asked for a 3-year extension, and we said a 2-year extension. Is that correct? And did we say, but no more? What did we?
Mr. Mayor, through you, there was a initial request, last time was for 3 years, and yes, council only granted a 2-year extension last time.
So it was another, well, two questions, I guess. One is, did we say and no more? And second, well, because I think we did that in one other situation. And second, is it possible for council to say, we'll give you 1 more year and no more? Is that in order, I guess, is the question.
Yes, council has that prerogative to say that. I would have to go back to the records to know completely whether or not that was what council decided previously. I can't say.
Okay. I think it was a different one, but I knew that we did not go for the entire 3 years, so. There was another development where we said and no more, and then that development moved, so.
Yes, and in my review of those previous reports, I do recall the initial request was for 3 years, but council approved 2. I just can't say, satisfactorily that it was also no more.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. Anyone else? And it is within, I do have another question, and it's about the stormwater management pond. Can you please just elaborate? What was proposed was that the stormwater management pond would be given to the town, but that's now changed. Can you just run through that quickly?
Yes, initially, as I understand it, the block of land that was identified with stormwater management pond was to be dedicated to the town. That is not the case under this current proposal. They would provide an easement in favor of the town for stormwater management purposes. That stormwater management pond would be a temporary facility, and a more permanent facility would be constructed east of these lands. It's been part of work that has been done through the previous background research and studies related to the East Fenwick secondary plan area. So this pond would be an interim pond, a temporary pond. And then we would have an easement over it to ensure that it is operational and functional and the town's interests are protected in terms of the pond, but we wouldn't actually hold ownership of it. And that way, when those lands to the east were to be subdivided, we wouldn't have to be giving land back to a developer. So it was determined, and this was something that was discussed with previous staff here, that an easement was the appropriate way to deal with that as an interim measure.
Okay, thank you. Council colleagues, Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I share my colleagues' concern about these continual extensions. I think there was some discussion last time about the fact that he was able to take the easy pickings off on Canberra Road, and that we had concerns that those lots along Balfour would be sort of not developed. And here we are a year later or 2 years later, and we're faced with the same situation. But having said that, I guess my question, and it kind of circles around what Councilor Ribiak was trying to get at, is there any economic or planning benefit to the town to not approving an extension and having these lots included in the East Fenwick development plan so that they're all developed together as a comprehensive plan dealing with stormwater, major servicing, lot size, et cetera, all the things that will impact on the new Fenwick secondary plan?
Mr. Mayor, through you, certainly I can appreciate that comment, and typically that is how we would like to see development proceed in a much more comprehensive manner. In this case, you have similar lots across the road, so there is that compatibility factor with respect to the development that you have before you this evening in terms of the larger lots. It is somewhat consistent and in keeping with that character along Balfour Street. And so it's kind of on that premise we're able to, suggest that it can still proceed. Just as background, we did have discussions with the applicant last week when we were working on this report, and initially staff were thinking that we would only recommend a 3-month extension because we do see that this has been going on and on for quite some time, and we really do feel that it needs to move on or move along, and we thought that would give enough time for them to deal with their sale of their lands and some of those other things, and they came back and said 3 months is probably too tight, and they had requested another 2 years, and we are recommending only 1 year, and as you have that recommendation before you this evening. So,
Thank you. Councillor?
Well, along those lines, Mr. Mayor, I think because it's quite likely we're going to see, if we do extend this, that we're going to see either a different type of housing there, whether there be semi-detached, townhouse, what have you, or much smaller lots, rather than us face the pushback from the neighbors when that all comes up and those lots are already developed. We should make it mandatory within the sales agreement that they be advised that the character of the lots behind them and abutting on them may be significantly different than the lot that they're sitting on. Because we all know with the mandates that we're receiving from the province and from the region and the higher densities, folks that are sitting on an 18, 19 meter lot are not going to be happy having a 13 meter or smaller butting on them. So I think if we're going to extend it and they are going to come to the market, we need to have that in the sales agreement to protect ourselves.
Thank you. So, in terms of what I'm hearing is it sort of in keeping with sort of the existing lots, it does mesh well, and there will be probably a change of density in behind. But I'm also hearing that council may want to say, well, this is this is it. I think council could make that determination. Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to propose perhaps an amendment to this to say that at the recommendation of staff, that 1-year extension be granted and that no further extensions will be considered.
Can the wording, is that okay wording, Madam Director?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's acceptable.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And that no further extensions be,
Will be considered.
okay, thank you. So it has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Papp. Any discussion to the amendment? There being none, I call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And now to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion? Councillor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to indicate that I'm just not comfortable at all with moving ahead without fully understanding all of the implications. And I just don't think we've had the time. Perhaps I should speak personally. I haven't had the time to look at it. So I will not support it on that basis. I just don't understand that it's necessary to make this decision now, so close to the deadline, when in fact there's been, as we've discussed, 9 years of time given to the current owner to do what he needed to do. Things have changed. Presumably they've changed for the better. That's why we would have had those conditions change. Seems to me that if those conditions are for the better, then allowing these lots to comply with a better set of circumstances would be of benefit to the town. I understand the arguments to the contrary, but I'm just not comfortable, so I won't support it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any others? So, Councillor Kersey?
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, with respect to content. The comment that I made with respect to the warning on the sales documents,
Yes.
if in fact this is successful, should that be encased in this motion, or can staff take that as a direction?
I don't know if we can do that. Let's find out the recommendation from Ms. Weens. Ms. Weens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, certainly I can take that as direction and include that within any subdivision document that comes forward.
Okay, thank you.
I'm happy with that.
Thank you. Anyone else? We ready for calling the question on the motion as amended? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you, as amended. Thank you. Now we move to presentation consideration of bylaws. It's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass, that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. Bylaw 3746 being a bylaw to set the rates of taxation for the year 2016. Questions or comments following through on everyone's, the province, the region, and the town? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Now, there's an item here that's arising from the Committee of the Whole meeting of May 2nd, and it's regarding the concussion policy. In this case, it's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King. Be it resolved, the Council hereby approves the Recreation, Culture, and Wellness concussion policy, and that the policy be numbered S701-03. Questions or comments regarding the concussion policy? Councillor Papp?
Very good. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess on a practical basis, when I read through this, groups that are using the arena, okay, tell me I'm a subcontractor, I'm going to rent the ice and I'm playing against another team. What exactly am I obligated to do? Just to be aware of this? Or in fact, if a player is injured? Because there's some very specific things that are outlined in here, and I'm just curious that I just need to have an idea of what does this mean for
Ms.
me
Van
as a
Ravensway?
subcontract.
Let's ask the director.
Right.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a education policy, so what will happen when you come in to rent ice time? You will be given a pamphlet, you'll be explained the pamphlet.
Right.
You'll sign off that you have been given it and you
Right.
understand it. You'll also be giving us your insurance and so forth. And then you'll be on your way. And our intention that they will implement what we have, but we do not govern them.
Right.
Our staff will, at the arena, they will do as they normally do. If there is an injury, 911 will be called, and the paramedics will take over.
Counselor?
So, all of my Pelham minor hockey, any other rentals, and you'll see where I'm going, because this has been a very sensitive topic across the sports world. A young person is injured playing with minor hockey, then it's on that association to take whatever necessary steps to contact whatever paramedical, medical requirements are. And then it's up to that organization, I'm not trying to put words, to make sure that that person returning would follow those steps that are outlined in there. It's not our obligation to enforce that. They have to take, it's on, so the people are clear, it's on that organization, whether it's minor hockey, private rentals, that it's up to them to monitor and be able to, if somebody decides to return and they've been hurt, then it's it falls on their shoulders. Is that fair to say?
Madam Director?
Mr. Mayor, exactly. It's through them. All of the larger associations, minor hockey, the OMHA has a concussion policy which each league must follow. So they will, in turn, when minor hockey, any rental, they will either give us their concussion policy, or
Okay.
we will be giving them the education piece of it.
I think that's good, because there's not just an education. If something actually happens, there's an obligation on part of those contractors and those organizations to follow through to ensure that those participants, if they are not able to return, are actually assessed and reviewed, so that they don't just show up the following. And that's been part of the thing, is we're, how can I say, at arm's length. Is that a good way to say it? That the responsibility lies in their hands. Am I missing
Senator
truth?
Ravensway?
Exactly.
Okay, that's, okay, I just wanted to be clear. I'm still not, because we're not quite clear, but I think I feel comfortable enough. The awareness is great, and I think it has to be understood, but I think I'm just thinking of what happens when things happen. We're gonna be looking at lacrosse, they're gonna have to wear helmets, they're gonna have to I've watched kids be hurt, and then come back sometimes with no assessment, and come back the following game. But that lies on that organization's doorsteps, right?
Exactly.
Okay, all right, thank you, I just want to be clear.
Okay, thank you. I have Counselor Durley, Kersey, Ribbiak.
I
Counselor
think my
Durley.
question has been answered. I was going to ask, if in fact the people using the ice have their own policies that conflict with our policy, they will follow theirs, they don't need to follow ours. We're just giving them ours for information's sake, and say, this is what you may need, but if you have your own policy, you can go ahead and do it. But sort of that's a risk management factor on our part?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is true. And also with that, they are giving us their insurance.
Okay.
Naming us co-insured.
Okay.
So no matter what, we have their insurance, naming us co-insured. There isn't a rental that goes into our facilities without the insurance.
It's not us to monitor that.
Thank you. Counselor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say that the solution statement really makes the whole thing very clear. The town of Pelham will educate and promote concussion awareness for people participating in our programs and using our facilities. It doesn't say that we're managing them. We're not managing the renters programs. We're trying our best to educate and ensure that they have a policy that they follow. And in some way that goes a distance to indemnify the town, I think. So I think I'm supportive of the policy, and I'm pleased that we are putting this out there and making a statement that we support a good concussion policy.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My issues are, again, with clarity. I agree with Councillor Kersey that the solution statement makes things absolutely clear. The problem I have is the solution statement comes at the very end of a very long document that kind of indicates roles of various parties, and at some point it gets awfully muddy. And let me just point to one example. We have discussion about what different groups will do, what the town will do, what parents and guardians will do, and then it goes into a discussion of what a concussion is, and then it talks about concussion signs and symptoms, and then eventually it gets to some really directive material around removal from play, suspected concussion, et cetera. And by the time you get that far into the policy, I'm really not certain as to who's supposed to be doing what and what obligation we've undertaken for ourselves. I understand what the policy is meant to be, and I agree with it wholeheartedly, and I'm entirely supportive of it. I just wish that the solution statement in its brevity and clarity would come an awful lot earlier so that everything else can be seen as a definition of that as opposed to this being way down at the bottom. And again, it may be that the only thing that the public will see is the solution statement and not the rest of it, other than in the brochure that's handed out. But the way it's presented, it comes to me with a certain degree of ambiguity. And so that's a problem. I'm supportive of it. I think if I read it and reread it and reread it, I can understand that what we mean is in there with what we say, but a quick reading of it sure doesn't, it's sure not easy to understand where our responsibility is and where it ends.
Thank you.
Anyway, those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if you want the CAO to comment on policy is drawn up.
Well, if you can
I
help us
believe
with
it's,
it, I would
I
certainly
believe
appreciate
it's
it.
consistent with other policies, Mr. CAO.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this follows the creative problem-solving process so that we have, all of our policies have been aligned so that there's the sort of the problem we're trying to solve, the key facts of that problem, and then our solution statement. So really what, as the Councillor Kersey mentioned, was the policy is the solution statement. The rest is information and supporting facts. And the reason why there is some length to that, as the director pointed out, is because it's the education component. So to change this particular policy format would be counter to all the other policies that we have.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, anything further?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate that, and I appreciate the consistency that occurs. Maybe the fact that the solution statements are at the very end of every policy might suggest that it might be useful to take that statement out and put it at the beginning of every policy, so that when you go into it, you can read and understand the whole thing. I don't like being a slave to that kind of process. I understand it. Again, I appreciate what it says. I'm supportive of what it says. I know that if I had that difficulty understanding exactly where our obligation begins and ends, somebody else reading it in the context of an actual event where somebody is looking for someone to take responsibility, I just think that there'll be an awful lot of discussion as a result of this policy stated the way it is. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support it. I'm just pointing out the issues that I have with it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Papp?
So on a practical basis, the beginning of the season, these groups will receive an information brochure, right? They won't actually receive it. The policy will be there on our books, but they will be given a brochure that's for education purposes and for practical implementation, I would presume, right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, exactly. They will be given a brochure. They will also be encouraged to contact the Niagara region, which the Niagara region is going around to every association and making sure that they have a concussion policy. So for instance, the Old Timers League, right now they do not have a concussion policy. I've already spoke to them. And throughout the summer, or, at some point, they will be making contact, and the region will also contact them to help them through the process so that they as well will have a concussion policy. It's basically an education as well as a encouragement to each organization to have a concussion policy and to educate their parents as well, or their parents, their wives. I don't mean the
For the old timers,
men, the old timers, but.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
I think what you've heard me say 1,000 times is the immunization of the corporation from the legal standpoint, and I'm comfortable with Councillor. I just want to feel that it's clear that other people reading this know what they're supposed to do and what we're doing. so that there's no sort of gray area where someone becomes injured. Now, anybody can sue anybody, you know, people say you can't, but you can. But then the question of where that onus lies. So I'm very supportive of it. I just want to know the practicality of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kersey. Oh, let's hear ladies first. Councillor King.
I will defer to the lovely lady.
Thank you, Councillor Kersey. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if the pamphlet that the individual groups would be receiving would be available to us, because I think that may clarify. It will clarify it for all of us, I think, because we are all getting caught up in what the policy is about. And as long as the staff, those working with the policy, understand what the process is, I think that's what's important. I think what those people who the town, or the groups that may be liable to the town or vice versa, what they're receiving is probably more important.
Thank you. Madam Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, definitely. We can circulate the brochure that will be used.
Extremely helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you for the suggestion. Councillor Kersey?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to suggest, if since there seems to be some discomfort with the amount of information that's in this policy and that the final statement is somewhat clouded because it's at the end, if we were to have a Schedule A that was attached to the policy and move into that Schedule A all of the key information with respect to concussions and the information that will be circulated within the policy, then that would move that statement up underneath the key facts, and then refer to a Schedule A as this is the type of information that would be circulated within the, because it's not really, I mean, all the information is pertinent, but is it pertinent to and necessary to encase it within the policy? That's,
So Councillor, just to that, so it's from page, this policy is intended to educate users, participants on concussion awareness. Right there where it starts, a concussion is a common injury among children and adolescents participating. Right there is when you'd move all that to the schedule, is that correct?
you could even go above that. You could go, the town of Pelham understands the seriousness of concussions, is committed to keeping participants safe,
Okay.
da-da-da-da-da. Bang, put the policy the solution statement there. The rest of it goes over to a Schedule A as it's part of the procedure and part of the information and all of that sort of thing. I put that forward as a suggestion that might
Okay.
get us past this impasse here.
The clerk's scribing something to me as a
Through
suggestion,
you.
Madam Clerk?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to suggest that procedures are often augmenting a policy, and it's done that way, so if there are any changes that are required to a procedure, it doesn't have to come back for a full policy amendment. So that's generally the way the step-by-step process would be, as a procedure that augments a policy, which I believe is mentioned in this policy. So.
Okay, thank you. So is Councillor, if Councillor Kersey makes that amendment, and we approve it, can staff follow up on that, and would council be okay with that type of, okay.
I'd be happy to make that amendment.
So the amendment is that the bulk of the information surrounding what a concussion is, et cetera, would be hived off into a schedule, but the rest of the policy would be approved, okay?
Second that,
Okay,
Mr. Mayor.
I don't know how you put that into a motion. So, and that the information about what a concussion is, et cetera, will be removed from the policy itself and put into a separate schedule.
Correct.
Okay? And seconded by Councillor Ribbiak. Any further comments to that amendment? All those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment carries. And now to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion? Thank you, Council, for those changes. Obviously, a very important policy. It's important for us to educate people and do so in a very, for something that's very important. And it's not only users of particular facility that was talked about, the arena, but it's also for baseball and soccer and things like that. Anything where folks are, or even the skateboard park where folks are using the facility. So it's important that we have this policy in place. So I'm going to call the question on the amended policy. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries as amended. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King. Be it resolved, following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and passed. Bylaw 3747 to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council of the town of Pelham in its regular meeting held today, the 16th day of May. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King. Be it resolved, this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, June 6th, 2016 at 6:30 p.m. unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned. Let's take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Did you get that amendment?
Yeah.
I mean,